Yes, we're back again. Chapter 4 this time. I'm doing this right after Chapter 3. So, as you may have noticed, I am trying to just get this done. The sooner I get my portion done, the sooner I can send it to somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing and can give me some better guidance. Because I'm a fuck up, man. So, you guys are hearing the story as it is. I by no means do I claim to be a good writer or a good author at that at that rate. However, I think that this fits a niche. It's a short story. People like short stories. People want something that's a quick read to get that fix. It's like fucking heroin. People are like, oh, gotta get that book fixed. Gotta get that book fixed. Yeah, well, here's something that they can go ahead and take a minute and fucking read. I mean, the whole thing will take maybe an hour and a half to read. But I mean, that's still an hour and a half of enjoyment. That's about the same amount of enjoyment as a movie, and that movie costs probably 3 times as much as what I'm going to charge for this book. So, I mean, this thing's only going to cost like maybe $3, $4, which is nothing in comparison to what some people charge for these things. So, chapter 4 is Crawl Space. Now, this one, quick little backstory. I used to work for a water mitigation company, and I dealt with a lot of sewage, like a lot of sewage, and our sales guys were fucking useless. They never crawled down in there into like crawl spaces in order to find out what was going on down there. They just wrote crawl space and drew a goddamn rectangle, which is incredibly dangerous because they're supposed to, let us know if there's any dangers or hazards or, be the first line of defense if the building might collapse on us. That kind of shit. Anyways, so I get there and the folder just has a rectangle on it. And the guy that drew it is like, oh yeah, it's not that big, it's not that big. So I crawl down there and this guy was fucking lying. It was huge. And in some spots, there was only like that much space. I am not a small person, but I have to squeeze between an area about that high in order to get to where the sewage is. And they had been sitting there for so long that even mosquitoes and bugs were starting to actually use it as a incubation site. Well, there was so much sewage that it actually clogged our truck and our truck mount. So I got stuck sitting under there while my coworker, who was sent there by himself originally because they wanted him to do the job by himself, which is fucking crazy because you never send somebody, especially somebody that has no experience in crawl spaces, you never send somebody alone into a crawl space. You always have somebody there just in case something happens. They originally sent him there by himself. No training in crawl spaces, no idea how to properly do it. But that's a different story. Anyways, I get stuck down there, and the entire time I'm just hearing, like, I'm pretty sure it was my anxiety and that kind of shit. I have PTSD, obviously, from a lot of shit that happened in my life. And for some reason, I just kept on getting this thought of like something crawling down there, like something big, like a monster or something crawling through there. I'm not necessarily claustrophobic, but it was dark. I'm laying in this area that is just full of bugs, and it was just so creepy because where I had to crawl to was way in the back corner where it was dark. The only light I had was my fucking headlamp, and all I got is a hose. And once the hose turned off, it was just quiet. and I started thinking that I was hearing a fucking baby cry, which I grew up in the country, which usually means a fucking bobcat or a coyote or something. And I'm just thinking, I'm in no position, nor am I armed to take on a fucking coyote or a bobcat that might be underneath this house. So, anyways, that's where the inspiration came for this fucking story. This part of the book. So, yeah, let's get to it now, shall we? Chapter 4, Crawl Space. The only option I had was to keep these videos as evidence, but I can't go to the police because I'll be arrested for theft and trespassing, as well as being crazy trying to submit a fake report. I also don't want to go back to the asylum anytime soon to put these back where I found them. I now faced an even weirder question now. Weirder question. Do I finish watching the rest of these? Again, these were still all possibly just some film school kids' projects. With the editing software available, some of these could have been done in a week or two. I knew it had been a while that I had been sitting there that morning, trying to best logic out just keeping the videos and watching them. I managed to convince myself that once I watched all of them that I would just drop the box off with a note to the police station. Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, that's the plan then. Texting Jimmy. Texting Jimmy, the reason I left was because I wasn't feeling well. He sent a sigh response and wanted to know if he could come over and watch the rest of the video. Freezing at the thought that he might take it and run, I told him I'd give him the phone, but I needed it back when I turned the box into the police. He gave me an exaggerated fine. And said he would be later over to pick it up. I wasn't too sure on whether or not I should let him see it. But maybe it is for the best that. But maybe it is for the best that so that someone else can see and I'm able to verify I'm not crazy. Looking at the time, I went back to the box and found an action camera covered in mud. Its protective case, though, was also in the box, but seemed to have been crushed. It was weird since the type of case was meant to be damn near unbreakable. But here it was, just splintered apart like someone smashed it with a sledgehammer. But the camera itself was fine, albeit pretty dirty. Looking the camera over, I found the USB charge port and decided to against my better judgment, to plug it into my computer. And after the software uploaded, a screen popped up. The screen showed a long list of pictures from some tight area. Someone in a muddy yellow hazmat suit and a mask was wedged into this area. The last of the pictures was a video. Double-clicking it, I instantly paused it due to the video, unlike the others, had clear audio. Plugging in my headphones, not knowing what to expect and not wanting my parents to hear, I pressed play again and listened and watched. Hello? This thing on? The man said, tapping the camera. He seemed to be an older guy, maybe mid to late 30s. He was wearing some sort of uniform, but soon began putting on the banana yellow protective suit and fitting some kind of respirator over his face. There was a younger looking guy with a less than enthused look on his face. Okay, kid, ready for your first crawl space? The younger guy didn't seem too comfortable and just said, "Oh, yes, overjoyed," in the driest tone of sarcasm I had ever heard. It made me laugh. It made me laugh a little. The camera shifted and it seemed to be getting placed onto a harness or affixed onto something attached to the man's suit. The weather seemed pretty warm wherever these guys were. And while the two walked over to the house, it became apparent that it was some kind of a beach house. There was sand and some sparse grass growing. Ugh. Oh, that was gross. That was gross. Okay. There was sand with some sparse grass growing where it could, surrounding this cute little house. Fuck. Yeah, it was a house. A rough sketch of a rectangle on a blue folder when the man stopped walking. Hot into you. When the man stopped walking. Are you fucking kidding me? He said, very annoyed. This fucking guy is useless. What's up? The younger man said, confused. Well, look at the house. The older man gestured, followed by the younger man's eyes. Now look at the moisture map. The shit isn't a rectangle now, is it? Realizing their predicament, the younger man dropped his shoulders and looked up to the sky, mimicking the elder's mood. Listen, we don't know what it looks like down there. I'm going to need you to stay by the entry, and I'll explore in there to find out what the real situation is. If I need help, I'll shout out to you what I'll need, okay? Yeah, the funny part is that this was the literal conversation I had with the kid, pretty much. Like, verbatim. Oh, oops, wrong one. There we are. Both men stood there, and the younger reluctantly agreed, but quickly removed the top portion of his suit, stating it was too damn hot to be wearing this shit. Fair enough. Let's get this started, shall we? The older man stated before walking up to a very small door set in the floor of a closet. The older man proceeded to start stepping down into the dark hole, and after only a few steps, the camera was down in this dirt and sand floored crawl space. The room was a rectangle, however, just to the left of the entry was another hole that was not. Oh, that should be to the right. Just to the right of the entry was another hole that was knocked out of a cinder block wall. Some sort of a trench was dug into the ground, and it was draining this black tar-like substance into a sub-pump. The room was currently The room he was currently in was still dry, so the man with an audible sigh began crawling through this hole into a side portion under the house. The 3-foot tall ceiling now compressed to about a foot and a half. He grunted, and you hear the slight sloshing of whatever was in the trench, followed by him suddenly stopping and looking at something. The camera was angled down and now trapped between the muddy floor and the suit. The light was moving around, illuminating the area in several places, but just out of sight of the camera's lens. Well, shit. Okay. Hey, kid. grab me the hose and get the truck started. I gotta tuck in here and get to the back section. The video was quiet other than the man's breathing and the faint sound of a baby crying that the man didn't seem to notice for several minutes, until the sound of a loud engine roared to life, snuffing it out to a point of nothing. Not too long after, the younger guy brought in this big vacuum hose, and the camera began moving again with the now steady sound of the strong suction. The area seemed to be getting more cramped the further the man crawled, periodically stopping to suck up chunky sewage from the deeper portions of the trench. Each time the end of the vacuum went into the water beyond the slurping and gulping of random air. Each time the end of the vacuum went into the water beyond the slurping and gulping of random air, the man would lay until he found a section that was essentially 100 square feet and maybe 2 to 3 feet deep. Oh well. That's just a bunch of sexy right there now, isn't it? The man said, looking at this large kiddie pool worth of someone else's shit. Plunging the end of the hose into the pool, he just seemed to lay there in the relative silence. But while sitting there, that's when he seemed to start hearing the crying child and taking audio notes on the 5 separate subsections of this crawl space. Now, if someone could just shut this freaking kid up, this might be an easy job. The video was pretty uneventful, however. The whole time, this constant crying only seemed to grow louder, almost as if it was in competition with the vacuum engine. The older man just kept on going, muttering every few minutes that this kid needs to shut the fuck up. Eventually, he managed to suck up almost all of the chunky, soupy mess in that area and discovered that there was a thick membrane under all the nastiness. Huh, that's an odd plastic, he said while pulling it up and seeing it was covering what appeared to be several very round stones. Looking around, he must have seen another puddle because he looked down again and seemed to be searching for another way around, not involving crawling on these rocks. But a look of defeat was in his eyes, and he began to move again, tentatively making his way, groaning as the uncomfortable surface must have just been killing his knees. But the sudden jump in height in the short space allowed him to at least squat instead of lay down in the nasty substance. The whole time the crying was now very loud and insistent. It was as if it was coming from within the room he was in. Finally, he managed to make it to the other end of the building. However, as soon as he plunged the head into the thick liquid, the sound of the engine, as well as the crying, went silent. That crying must have been the truck, he said, his mask now slightly fogged by the humidity. The younger guy hollered down the hatch about the machine shutting down, and the older told him to go drain the tank. Several minutes of silence passed before the older man's flashlight started to flicker. God damn it! Why do they always buy us the cheapest shit to use? Flicking it off to save power, he would have to wait for the kid to come back to the hole to get a new light source. Not too long after the light went out, the sound of the truck leaving was only made worse by the small slivers of light making it to the back corners, where the older man sat annoyed, and all at once the muffled sound of the crying returned. That's just freaking wonderful, he said, kicking one of the larger round rocks, the sound becoming more clear for a split second. What the hell? Turning on his leg, he lifted his leg and kicked the small boulder again, but held it up. The camera only caught a glimpse before falling to the ground again, and the man screaming expletives while crawling backwards. Light still trained on the partially flipped. No. His light still trained on the partially flipped rock. squinting to get a better look. I leaned in, trying to see what was so scary. But all I could make out were what looked like worms attached to the bottom of the stone. That wasn't until it started raising out of the ground, a segmented body wriggling up violently from the mud. I heard the man scream and start to move, but now the cries were drowning out the whatever he was saying. Was drowning out whatever he was saying. The unknown creature slapped down, splashing the gross liquid repeatedly as more of it worked itself free, now being joined by countless others, tearing through that weird membrane from before. I tried to get more details, but the man started scrambling, looking at his shoulder where one of the nightmare-filled monsters had grabbed on. It reared back, opening its underside, revealing thousands of worm-like legs, each tipped with spine-like grippers. Its whole body cavity opened now like a Venus flytrap. It slammed and it slammed down onto whatever the camera was attached to, blacking out the video. Thrashing sounds mixed with the man's terrified pleas for help focused as the camera flew across the screen, landing near the small opening he would have to crawl to in order to survive. There were so many of them now, of all sizes, ganging up on him, and he grabbed blindly for anything to pull himself free. His suit now torn and bloody from the few able to latch on before he could rip them away. From the right of the camera, a larger of the creatures slid out from behind another hole in the wall, its body being pushed along by what looked like a baby's legs. Black slime oozing. Why the fuck did it go from oozing from its body as it went? The man now on his butt was pulling himself towards the bigger one, facing all the smaller ones, completely unaware of the danger. Mentally, I was screaming for the poor man to just turn around and see what was coming. Kicking off the last small one, he whipped around, crawling with all his strength, only to stop and look up slowly as the large creature blocked the already obscured view, and the man's screams became muffled. Then eventually it was silent. All except for the wails of the screaming babies. The body of the larger creature dragged itself away as several of the smaller monstrosities dragged the man's body back into the strange pit. A few minutes passed as the pit started to fill back up again with that strange black substance. Even though the whole situation was as violent as it was, once the pool filled again, all the creatures were gone, and it looked as if nothing had ever happened. Even the screaming baby sounds were now silent. Like the other videos, the video continued to record. I sat listening for anything that could show this was fake, but at this point, I was beginning to think these weren't fake anymore. Eventually, I heard the dull hum of the truck returning from dumping the waste. My heart raced knowing what just happened. "Yo, you okay down there, old man?" the younger guy shouted. Please don't go down there. Please just turn around and walk away." I knew it was pointless, but I still mumbled it to myself. I knew it was pointless, but I still mumbled it to myself for a sense of security. What the fuck? The camera lifted up, and I could see the young man's face and the look of confusion he had. After looking around and shouting out his coworker's name a few times, he began crawling his way out. After crawling through back into the dry area, the sound of muffled cries started again. The last part of the video was the young man lifting the camera, and from the other side of the room behind him was one of those creatures crawling out from the trench. His last words from the video was, "There's the off button." After that, the screen went black and was over. I sat there rewatching the video looking for anything that might indicate CGI was used or looking for strings or puppetry being used, but couldn't find anything. My phone started to vibrate and it was Jimmy letting me know that he was here. I grabbed the phone and went down to meet him. He was still very excited to see the videos, but I warned him. I didn't think these are fake. Man, don't worry about this, was all he said before hopping on his bike and racing off. I started to feel a bit woozy and laid down. Within a few minutes, I was gone and into my own dream world. Hopefully the things I've seen won't work their way in. Okay, and that was chapter 4. So that was Crawl Space. And yes, that's the kind of stuff that I think about while I'm at work in an area that I am unfamiliar with, and it is tightly cramped. So for any of y'all that are not claustrophobic or don't have a fear of, tight and closed spaces at our houses that you have no clue what the fuck is going on underneath there, awesome. And I hope that this chapter creeps you out and makes you think twice about just, kicking random shit underneath somebody's house. But on that note, y'all have a good rest of your day and have a good night. Bye.